And welcome back to the New Jersey Morning Show. I'm Laura Jones. The 2024 election has brought some fascinating developments across the country, and New Jersey has been no exception. From the presidential race to the high-stakes U.S. Senate contest and competitive congressional races, voters made their voices heard in impactful ways. Joining us now to unpack it all is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Micah, it's good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let me start with what you noticed from last night, some of the trends you might have seen in New Jersey election results. Did anything in particular surprise you? Loaded question, I know.
Well, a 4-point margin is the closest result we've seen in New Jersey for president since 1992. This is a decades-long trend. New Jersey does hold on with a Democrat, but by the barest of margins. And really, you have to look at this in the context. You can't help but look at this in the context of Governor Murphy's unexpectedly close gubernatorial race in 2021. And you have to say, look, this cycle has been disastrous for the Democrats, and they are within a hair's breadth of losing a statewide race, which you would think would be almost unthinkable in a state that has almost 1 million more Democrats, but clearly 1 million more Democrats are not coming out and voting. So where do we see this difference? Where is it manifesting itself? Look, Trump won Morris County. Harris won Bergen County by 3 points. These are huge numbers. The Monmouth County went for Trump again, but by 4 times the margin that they did in 2020. So this is, the suburbs are reverting to a time when Republicans were able to compete in them. And Democrats have made it a big part of their expansion map for the last 20 years. Last night we saw a big flashing red wake-up call that the suburbs are maybe up for grabs in the future.
Where are the Democrats getting it wrong? Is it their messaging? Is it they're focusing on the wrong issues? Jeanette Hoffman was just on saying, Democrats sometimes talk too much about guns and abortion, whereas, it's the economy. What do you think?
Well, I do think that we have to be careful not to generalize too much. I do think that Jeanette is correct when she says that the economy was on the minds of a lot of voters. And you know what? That tends to always be the case in presidential years, more than anything else. It's the economy, stupid, right? And so there is no question that voters felt frustration about inflation. They felt frustration that they specifically took out on President Biden, which is why he wasn't running for re-election. And I think in retrospect, Vice President Harris was not able to do enough to distance herself from that. So when you have a president that is as unpopular as President Biden was, even less popular than President Trump was 4 years ago when he was running for re-election, you've got to do something to change that dynamic, and Democrats were not able to do that.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit just about overall voter turnout? And again, the fact how we had early voting here in New Jersey, we did in 2021, but how we seem to be having more participation, especially on the Republican side, what we're learning and how things might be shifting as we are already looking ahead to 2025 and New Jersey's race for governor, which is going to be an open seat. Phil Murphy, having served 2 terms, is not able to run for another term. So you've got, primaries on both sides of the aisle.
We won't know the final turnout numbers until we get official results, which is going to be, 10 days away. But we do know this, at least 10 days away. But we do know this, Laura. You are absolutely right that New Jersey has never had over 1 million people vote early in person before. We went to early in person voting in 2021. We had it in 2022 and 2023. It was a mode of voting that was used by about maybe 10% or a little bit better of what we saw in this race, in the first presidential race that we had with early in-person voting. So this is something clearly that voters have responded to, and they've responded well to. And it was the canary in the coal mine. It was the early warning bell that that Republicans were enthusiastic, that Republicans were coming out. And the question was always going to be, could they sustain it through the early voting period? And could they sustain it into Election Day? And they did. And so you have to ask yourself, is this something they will be able to continue? One thing I do want to caution, and again, not to take too much from a presidential race, is there's a big difference between a surge in presidential voters that come out for Trump and maybe only come out for Trump, and whether or not they stay to vote in other elections other than the presidential race. That's the part that remains to be seen going into next year.
All right, that was kind of another thing I was just about to bring up. Next year, 2025, in New Jersey, I think New Jersey and Virginia are going to be the only states electing a governor next year.
That's right.
So will that impact, will the national spotlight come in? Republicans say, hey, New Jersey's in play, dumping more money in to try and win a Republican seat. Like, how does that impact the national scene and what New Jersey may get as far as resources go to help candidates on both sides, whether Democrat or Republican?
Yeah, I think you are going to see a lot of national attention on New Jersey, particularly and Virginia, given how close those states were. Virginia was even closer than New Jersey last night. And so I think you will see a lot of attention. There is a lot of enthusiasm on the Republican side, particularly on the MAGA side. Let's go off and let's do this again next year. But just as that might cut potentially to the Republicans' advantage, you also have this very persistent trend in which New Jersey and Virginia are the first midterms, the first referendum on the new president, right? We come a year earlier than the other states do. And very often that is an opportunity for voters to express some frustration. Maybe campaign promises haven't been met. Maybe the honeymoon period is over. And so typically the party that is in control of the White House struggles in that next year in New Jersey and in Virginia. And so we think that maybe Republicans will be on the defensive next year. Particularly if you have unified government in Washington, we will know that the Republicans, for better or for worse, are responsible for whatever we see coming out of Washington next year. And if it's good, then they'll do well. And if it's not so good, and if expectations haven't been met, then that's the party that'll get blamed.
So kind of really, as we're wrapping up this segment here, what I'm hearing is, these results should not be dismissed. People need to look at them, learn from them. Do you, bottom line, think, though, that last night's results, the results that are still being certified, 2024 results, will have a lasting impact on how candidates campaign in New Jersey for future elections?
I do. I think they will have an impact. I think they need to have an impact. It needs to be a wake-up call to New Jersey Democrats that they got to figure out what they're doing wrong in particular. But I also think we should not use too much, we extrapolate too much from a presidential year and distinguish that from a non-presidential year. The question is, how much can Republicans hold on to that momentum that they had last night in a non-presidential contest?
Yeah, well, Micah Rasmussen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us of the Rovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. We're already going to be talking about the next race. It doesn't end.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you. And our coverage of the election 2024 continues here on The Morning Show. Stay with us.